Thank you to everyone for being here. We are recording, so we'll go ahead and get started. This is, at least on paper, the biggest class I've ever taught. We had about 100 people register for this class, and that's freaking awesome. I love this. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being part of this. Thank you for showing up for yourself, for the collective, for learning, for growing, and figuring out what the erotic means to you. So some of you may have found me through Conscious City Guide. Some of you may have found me through Plura, formerly known as Bloom. Some of you might know me personally. And I welcome all of you here, whether you've known me for a long time or if we are just getting to know each other. So this class is an introduction to the conversation and practices focused on conscious sexuality, eroticism, mindfulness, and look, it is an intro. Like we could spend decades studying any one of these particular topics and pulling on any one of these threads. Today, we're going to talk about eroticism, which is very big, and we're going to talk about it as I understand it. It may not be exactly the same for you, but I invite you to come with a curious mind and an open heart and see what this conversation might reveal for you. As a reminder, this is not a substitute for therapy or coaching. If you have a therapist or a coach, hopefully they can support you in anything that might come up for you during this class. We are not able to offer any individual support during this class, but if you do have questions, please reach out. I'll drop my email and contact information in the chat. And if you stick around for a little bit longer, I'll drop in my socials and all of the other different ways you can work with me and get to know me. So I'm going to start with a bit of an intro to me and to my beloved who is assisting me today. And then we're going to get into the juicy details about the erotic within. So, okay, thank you so much. I'm nervous. These classes always make me nervous / excited because they're juicy topics. It's a whole bunch of people I don't know, and there's a lot of you. So again, I appreciate you all for being here. Thank you for taking time out of your morning, your afternoon to be here and talk about sexy shit. So for those of you that have just joined, and if you don't know me, I am Andrea Devin Bertoli. I am a holistic pleasure coach and sex educator, also your friendly neighborhood sex witch. Thank you, Michael, for asking about that. I teach workshops and classes online and in person. I do private events. I speak at festivals, at conferences, and if you have a podcast, yes, please join me to be on your podcast to talk about all things sexy. I do these free events with Conscious City as my event, person, my event entity, in order to bring new people into this conversation. Like, yes, absolutely, it is a business thing for me. I get 100 new emails after talking to all of you, and it's hopefully 100 new connections that I get to help blow your mind. This is really my goal as a sex educator and as a coach, is to really blow your mind with the possibilities that await within you, within your body, within your partnership. Not because I am magic, although I think I am, but because you hold this wisdom, you hold this pleasure inside of you. So I want you to leave today's class and any future classes and sessions you join me for with a sense of your own sacred power, with a sense of your own erotic depth within. I want our time together to help you feel more into the possibilities that live within you right now in this moment. My work as a coach and an educator combines holistic practices like Tantra and Taoism and meditation and mindfulness and breath work, along with science-backed research and therapeutic and clinical wisdom. So I really think of myself as this Venn diagram between like kind of hippie sex nerd, like a hippie and kind of like sex nerd that like brings all these things together. So it's ancient and intuitive, and it is also practical, realistic, and applicable to your day-to-day. The other thing to know about this work is that I approach this as a healing practice. Sex is fun, sex is pleasurable, can do really cool things to our bodies and to our minds, but it is also healing. For so many of us, we have been harmed either directly or indirectly because of our sexuality or in some sort of sexual way. And when we approach sex as a healing modality, it can be deeply transformative. So it is not separate from our emotional health, our physical health, our sleep, our food, our meditation practices. Like it is all the same. And our work together is a way to bring us back to that wholeness that is within. So a little bit of disclosure. So I identify as a bisexual, kinky, polyamorous tantrika, and I welcome all of you, however you identify, whomever you fuck, if you fuck at all. And in my work as a coach and educator, I work with all humans. So all of you are welcome here. And that being said, I will not tolerate any misogynistic, any racist, any homophobic, transphobic, kinkphobic, no phobias allowed here. And my beloved Christopher is monitoring the chat. And before we get settled, I do want to introduce my beloved and my co-host today, Christopher. He is Christopher Freer Brown. You can see his name at the bottom. He's one of the only people on video. He's helping with chat today and letting folks in and out of the room. And he is also the human I'm talking about when I talk about all the great sex I'm having right now in my life and all the deep eroticism that I get to experience. It is shared in partnership with this beautiful man. So please give him a virtual high five for being like the most attuned and most supportive partner on the planet. He's a sex therapist himself. So we talk about this a lot in our life, and I could not be more grateful for his partnership. So thank you, my love. Okay, quick moment of housekeeping for anybody who dropped in a little bit late. You're welcome to be video off. Looks like everybody's taken that into consideration. I literally can't see any of you, especially if you're video off. And if you do go video on, there might be a lot of you, so I can't, check it all. I'll check the chat as possible. I'm going to talk for about 20 minutes or so, and then we will open it up to Q&A. For Q&A, you're welcome to go video on or not. You can use the reactions button down in the bottom to virtually raise your hand. If that doesn't work, then you can physically put on video and raise your hand, and we can call on you. Finally, I will be sending a collection of emails to those precious emails that you sent, which I appreciate so much. And you'll get 3 emails following up with all sorts of practices, wisdom, little gifts, social media, all sorts of stuff so you can follow and engage. I just dropped some links into the chat so you can find me on Patreon for all of my in-depth, uncensored, pleasure-focused practices, and then find me on social media for all the G-rated stuff that I can't talk about. Okay, so take a sip of water. So my intention today in talking about the erotic within is to introduce this idea of this esoteric, wild, beautiful expression of the erotic that is in you right now. This is a huge topic. You may have visions, you may have insights, you may have questions that come up, and I want that all. I want your own wisdom and practices to infiltrate with this. Today is a chance to talk about what the erotic means to me and how it feels in my body and how it works in our life. And maybe this works for you and maybe it doesn't, and that is okay. So I want you to really ponder what it might mean for you in this moment, in this chapter in your life, and how some of the concepts or maybe all the concepts I talk about really work for you. So I shared this yesterday in the email that I sent out to all the participants what if we start to understand the erotic to be so much more than just sex? Colloquially, we use the word erotic to mean sexual, and yet I'm asking you today to dismantle that, at least temporarily, so that we can explore the idea of the erotic as something so much bigger than just sex as this thing that we do. So it's really this life force energy that is in us at all times. And because it is in us at all times, it is not something that we have to do or we have to become. Erotic is something that we are in this moment. No matter what you're doing right now, no matter how you feel in your body, no matter how sexually active or inactive you are in this moment, like you are an erotic being right now. So if we work with this definition of the erotic as something beyond just sex, what does it mean to feel erotically charged during our daily life? What does it mean to be erotically embodied as a person who holds this erotic energy with respect and reverence and awareness as much as possible, right? At all times seems pretty elusive, as we have to exist in this structure where we have to make money, we have to pay our bills, we have to exercise our physical bodies, we have to pay attention to things happening to the planet and in the world. So maybe it's not 100% of the time, but how can we open up to experiencing it more often than not? So I want to share two definitions. I shared this in the email yesterday too. So Esther Perel, who is a world famous sex therapist and relationship therapist, says eroticism is not sex per se, but it is the qualities of vitality, curiosity, and spontaneity that make us feel alive. And feminist activist Audre Lorde says it as the erotic is not a question of what we do, it is a question of how acutely and how fully we can feel in the doing. So we're good. When we think about this aliveness and how to tap into it and how to infuse it into our daily lives, we're going to explore that today. And then we're going to do a couple of practices at the end, just about 5 to 10 minutes each, to really just touch that energy that's in you right now. Today's class is a little bit more experiential and esoteric. Next month in our mindful sex class, we're going to talk about multi-orgasmic journeys, so a little bit more back in the body. So I want you to leave today with an awareness of the erotic, whatever that looks like for you. And I want you to leave with questions, with an openness, with a curiosity about how this might show up for you. So the reason that we often don't feel connected to this part of ourselves, we don't feel this erotic aliveness, is because we are given 1.5 million ways to distract ourselves, right? Whether it's our phones in our pockets, whether it's notifications on our computer, whether it's debt or medical challenges or mental health care or systemic changes, global catastrophes, things like that. Like, it is hard to stay tuned in to our energetic and kind of vital selves, to that pulse that's within us. So again, it's not a matter of being more erotic. It's not a matter of becoming or doing something more erotically. It's really tuning in to what is already inside of you. We get to heal our relationship to that, not that we have to change it per se. So how do we take the mundane, the everyday, and make it more erotic? How do we practice tuning into this? So I think of eroticism as this flow that we can tap into, right? So one of the metaphors I really like, I'm a water baby. So if these two metaphors work for me, maybe they work for you. Maybe you'll need to develop your own. I think of eroticism as a river that we can flow with, or an ocean current that we can kind of bob along in. You can stand at the shore and put your feet and ankles and maybe even up to your waist in the water, in the ocean, but not really be in it, right? You're not really like flowing with it. Likewise, you can put your toes in the river and not be flowing with the current. You can feel it and enjoy it, and it might be sensation-based, and that might be lovely, but you're not like in it. So if you've ever had the chance to swim in a river or swim in the ocean or even in a lake, you can feel this kind of pulse of energy. When we let go and let ourselves float in that current, that to me is what the erotic feels like. So it feels like not, again, something that I have to, challenge myself to keep up with the river or try and catch the river or do something differently. It's how do I let myself relax into that? And if there's any surfers on the call, I'm a surfer myself, like that moment when you like just catch the wave and it's like you're in perfect synchronicity with the ocean and the tides and the wind and the moon all at once. It's like this beautiful moment of connection. That to me is that erotic flow. Sometimes our sex can be like that. Sometimes our sex can be very connected. One of the very non-esoteric, very pop culture references that I really viscerally felt in my body one time was, if you've ever seen the movie Avatar, there's the first one, I haven't seen the second one, the first one where he's learning how to ride his creature. I don't remember what the creature is called. And there's the connection that they have to have, right? And they all have those beautiful long braids, and the long braid connects with the braid of the animal, and they have that connection. They call it Zahelu, connection. I think that is the very felt sense that I have had before in practices, whether it's a breathwork practice, whether it's in the ocean, whether it's making love with my beloved, whether we're just breathing together. That is the felt sense of this connection. And I'll give you a very non-sexual example. A couple of months ago, we were staying at this really beautiful place in Santa Barbara, and they have this beautiful yoga room. And the yoga room had all these beautiful sound bowls, like the crystal healing bowls, which I've never played before. I've been in plenty of yoga classes and sound healing sessions where they do them. So I didn't really know what I was doing. I was just kind of like fucking around with the bowls. And they all resonate at different frequencies. They're different, tones. And I was playing and I was banging around and having fun and just kind of giggling and playing. And then there was this moment where like all of the bowls were in harmony and I was in it with it. I was in the sound in a way that I had never experienced before. And I remember Christopher coming in and he was watching me play, and he was like, "Have you done this before?" And I said, "No, but this is what sex feels like. Like this is what that energy is, right? It's that connection to all that is." You can take it farther and say the erotic is God. The erotic is the universe when we tap into this universal feeling of what is in us. If you've experienced psychedelics or any type of entheogenic medicine, so like Molly is our medicine of choice, these can help you access those states of being. Psychedelics and MDMA and ketamine, these are not quick fixes. You have to have a background in some of these practices. You have to have a felt sense of safety before kind of venturing into these medicines. But if you have therapeutic support, if you have coaching support, if you have an extended, meditation, yoga, breathwork, erotic practice, psychedelics can help you tune into that even more deeply. They allow us to heighten this energy and pay more attention to it while also shutting off some of the chatter that's often in our brains. So whether you do psychedelics or not, whether you practice sex magic or not, whether you have ever played sound bowls or not, you can know that this is in you because it is in everything. We are water. We flow with this energy all the time. And I invite you to slow down and tap into this and pay attention. We pay attention to this. We drop into this by feeling more of yourself, feeling more of your arousal, feeling more of your hunger, feeling more of your need for rest. You tap into it by asking your body when it's hungry, what does it want to eat, sleeping when you're tired, going to the bathroom when you need to go to the bathroom. And again, like we are so many of us are so struggling because we are so easily distracted. And I can count myself as part of that. Like I am not somehow like immune to all of these pressures. Like I will doom scroll on Instagram way past my bedtime. I will get super caught up in my work and distracted and overscheduled and all of that. It happens to me too. This is not something that I have thus far figured out how to avoid. But when I can drop back in, that's when I know that it's there. So the more I feel it, the more I have access to it. So give yourself the grace to drop in, to turn off the devices, to turn off the TV, to take the nap, even though you know you have that thing to finish. Give yourself that chance to feel. Give yourself that chance to drop in. And bringing this back to sex, most of us are taught to feel our erotic energy as being horny. Great. Be horny, like be excited, be desirous, be turned on, whatever the word is that you like to use. And a lot of us are taught that when we feel that desire, when we feel that horniness, when we feel that turn on, that we have to do something with it, that we have to masturbate and get rid of it, which is what a lot of people tell me. that we have to, make our partner responsible for it, that we have to do something with it, rather than understanding it as, again, part of this life force, part of what is in us at all times. So this is a process that I work on, especially with my men who have a harder time kind of holding their arousal, is really learning to be with the turn on. And a lot of educators and coaches would talk about this as running the sexual energy in yourself. So your sexual energy is yours. It is not for someone else. Does not have to be in service of somebody else. Your sexual energy, your erotic energy, your innate natural turn on is for you. And again, when we take that step back and think of, okay, the erotic is not just sex, it is so much more. It is also creative energy, how I get stuff done, how I am bringing my business to life. It is how I maintain good friendships. It is how I stay connected to my beloved. My energy is what gives me the energy to be out in the world and get stuff done and be a good human and be a turned on, as in lit up, not just sexually turned on, but a turned on human. Most of us are taught that our sexual energy is not ours, especially, but not exclusively, for those of us that were raised as women. We have been taught, and I am very much included in this, that our sexuality was something that was for other people. Our pleasure is for someone else. Our pleasure is a gift that we give, or a commodity that we trade. And again, for thousands and thousands of years, it very much was very practical for us to do that. We just got the right to get our own freaking credit cards in 1974, and we just got the right to get our own business loans in 1988. Of course, we use our sexuality to rely on men to support ourselves. So we are unwinding not only your own individual physical experience, your own individual traumas and happenstance, you are also unwinding generations and decades and thousands of years of tradition. So if you feel like it's maybe hard to tap into your energy, like, you are not alone. This is the work that we are here to do. So erotic embodiment, then, feeling more of your eroticism, feeling more of your arousal, your turn on, your life force, is learning how to hold that, right? And that takes practice. We don't know, we cannot have a sense of knowing about what that looks like in our body until we start to experience it. So whether you choose breath work or meditation or yoga or running, like my beloved does, as a practice to feel more and express more, we don't know yet what is possible. I had an orgasm yesterday that I could not have imagined even 6 months ago, because it was so expansive and so long and so different than anything I had ever experienced, that I couldn't have imagined it until I actually did it. And so now it's like, oh my God, what is possible next? Going from that as my new baseline, right? So learning to hold more, learning to feel more, learning to really dance with what is inside us and be open to what is next is really super powerful. So the other thing that this invites you in to do is, if we reimagine the erotic as so much beyond sex, and as instead of sex as a life force energy, we also have the opportunity to dismantle what sex is, right? So sex, again, colloquially, commonly, as most of us use it, is like some sort of arousing activity that we do, usually with our genitals, usually with another person, usually to get off or feel pleasure. But what if you dismantle that entire idea of sex itself? It allows us then to feel that flow of energy, totally clothed, sitting across from my beloved in a breathwork practice where we're not having sex, but we are so deeply connected, so turned on, so alive within. That can also be sex. And it invites us to reconsider the idea of orgasm as well. If orgasm is more than, and I would postulate that orgasm is more than just touching your body in a certain way until it does a certain thing. And then we have, 8 to maybe 12 or 15 contractions of our pelvic floor and our genitals. Great, feels good. What if it could be so much more? What if you could have energetic orgasms? What if you could have orgasms without touch? What if you could have, I've had some of the most intense sexual experiences my love and I have ever had, resulted in tons of turn on, tons of arousal, tons of energy moving. And as I was reaching the moment of orgasm, instead of having a deeply pleasurable experience, I burst into tears and I started sobbing hysterically. And that's happened more than once. Maybe the idea of orgasm is that it's physical and energetic and emotional all at one time. We can have crygasms, we can have breathgasms, we can have gigglegasms, or even angergasms. All of these things are possible in our body when we dismantle the idea of orgasm, when we dismantle the idea of what sex can be. Furthermore, this also invites you to reconsider how you might be approaching sex in your own sex life, your solo sex life, your masturbation practice, and in your partner practice. We often hear as coaches and therapists that, I don't feel desire anymore. How do I feel more desire? Or I don't have a libido anymore. Like, how do I do this? Right? Like, how do I come back to my sexual self? And again, like, you are already it, but there are practices, there are tools to help you tune into that in a different way. So if we are only focused on having sex one way, having it a certain, it looks like this all the time, and, we have to do it on Tuesdays or whatever the magic day is, we are losing that sense of vitality that allows us to feel more connected. We can absolutely go through the motions, and for some people, good enough sex is good enough. It is comfortable, it is joyful, maybe it's even orgasmic, maybe it's even pleasurable. And if it helps you feel connected, I love this for you. But you are all here today learning about the erotic. So I think that that there is more, that there is so much more possible. So in a relationship and with yourself, you can think of this as the erotic thread, right? I talked about this a couple of months ago. And then after I did the workshop, A, we both got super, super sick with COVID for the first time. And B, I also had so many more realizations after I taught it. So I taught about the erotic thread as this connecting force between, like, when we have sex last time and when we have sex next time, right? The trust, the flirtation, the intimacy, all these things that help us feel connected and feel charged before, during, and after our sexual play. But again, if we think about it as something that is in us, then your erotic energy, your eros, your sexual energy, like, this is yours to hold, to dance with, to play with. Your partner is not responsible. Your partner is not responsible for that. You are responsible for that. And if you have a partner, they are responsible for their own. We can also be in service of our partner's eroticism, right? I love my partner's sexual expression. I want to encourage him in his sexual expression, even if it's not for me, whether it's a solo practice or with somebody else. I want him to have that energy, but it is ultimately his to work with, dance with, play with, explore, and expand upon. So we often blame our partner for, oh, I'm not attracted to them, or oh, they never do this right, and so then I never want to have sex with them. But again, it is in you. So as you then consider sexuality for yourself, how do you dance with it in yourself? Do you masturbate very quickly in the dark, quietly, just to have an orgasm? Great. Sometimes you just need a quickie like that, to either bang one out before you go to sleep, or because you need a midday break, which is what I used to do when I worked a more corporate job. I would take a little lunch break and also have an orgasm in the middle of the day. But what if you took yourself on a little date and made it a whole experience, just as if you were meeting with a lover for the first time or a repeated time? What if you gave yourself the chance to really feel more of your own sexual energy, not in service of orgasm, not in service of, fixing something or getting ready for your partner, but just in service of your own erotic expression, your own play, your own dance with this divine energy. So learning how to dance with that, learning how to play with that, these are the tools and the wisdom that I invite you into today. So I'm going to take a 1-second break because my dishwasher is beeping and I don't want it in the recording. I knew it would end as soon as I was on the call. So please hold for 1 second. And before we jump into our practices, Christopher, I saw that you were typing some stuff into the chat. Were there any questions or are there any questions right now before we jump into about a 10-minute practice? Okay, awesome. So I'm going to invite you into kind of a 2-part practice that invites you to feel more of your physical body and potentially, maybe, hopefully, kind of tap into a little bit more of that energetic within. One moment. Like a very large amount of street noise happening right now. Okay. So before I do this one, I want you to all make yourself as comfortable as possible. So whether you are in a chair, maybe put both feet down, maybe shake your butt a little bit so that it feels a little more stable or a little bit more grounded. If you're on a couch or on a bed, you could even lay down for this practice if that feels comfortable for you. We're going to be working with the pelvic floor, which I'll talk about in a second, and we're going to be working with our breath. So it's kind of, again, a 2-part practice, so breath and also physical. If you are not familiar with your pelvic floor, we're going to do a quick intro to it. Your pelvic floor is the sling of muscles, the collection of muscles that literally holds all your intestines and any reproductive organs you have and your bladder inside your body. This is a sling of muscles that, like any muscle in your entire beautiful human body, needs sometimes a little bit of attention, a little bit of strength building, or a little bit of what would be the word, like loosening, right? Some people have a over tight pelvic floor. So if you've ever heard of Kegel exercises, right, for people with vaginas, where you do the lift and the pull, this is a version of that. But every body has a pelvic floor and we access it a little bit differently, but it's all the same. So for every body, what you can do right now is to really tune into your pelvic floor. I'm going to have you imagine that you have to fart, but there's somebody really awesome in the room with you and you don't want to torture them. So you're going to squeeze your pelvic floor as if you're holding in a fart, and then you're going to let it go. And so if you're in a chair, you'll feel your whole butt kind of relax down. And if you squeeze it again, as if you're trying to hold that fart in, you'll feel that kind of, for me, it feels like a lifting. And then as you drop it out, it's like that. If you have a pussy, if you have a vagina, you can feel it as like an upward squeezing. So if you're a yogi, we would call this mula bandha. It's like engaging of the pelvic floor where we kind of bring everything in and up kind of towards our belly button. If you have a penis, you can imagine lifting your penis without touching it, right? So you're using the front muscles of your pelvic floor to lift your penis just a little bit without doing any touching. So between the front and the back, that is your pelvic floor. So we're going to practice a little bit of engagement. It doesn't have to be, there's no perfect way to do it. There's no one specific way to do it. If it feels better to focus on the front, great. If it feels better to focus on the back, great. Whatever works and feels good for you. And then I want you to drop into your breathing, and then we'll combine them together. So most of us breathe kind of really high level. We kind of breathe up in here, and that leads to shallow breathing. It leads to, can exacerbate any anxiety or nervous feelings we're having. So we really want to focus on breathing into the belly. So if you have yoga pants on, roll them down. If you have hard pants on with buttons and zippers, which I basically stopped wearing in the pandemic, if you have hard pants on, you can roll those down or unbutton them a little bit. Let your low belly be soft. There's so much pressure on us to have really tight bellies and tight abs and all of that. And that is just not how we are meant to be. We are meant to be a little soft and able to breathe and able to move in this area. So if you're laying down, I find this especially easy laying down. It's a little bit harder for me sitting, but in service of video, we'll be sitting. So put your hand on your low belly. So that's, for me, feels best. There's kind of like right below my belly button. And then another hand on your diaphragm. So just below your bra strap if you're wearing one, or kind of on your solar plexus between your ribs. And imagine you're actually able to breathe into both hands. So you may have been taught other breath practices over time that focus on filling a vase from the bottom to the top, or whatever metaphor kind of works for you. I like to imagine that, yeah, I'm filling up a balloon from the bottom into the top and kind of letting it go all at once. So take about 5 breaths just in that deep belly breathing space. Take one more. And hopefully, even with those 5 breaths, you start to feel yourself being a little bit more calm, maybe a little bit more relaxed, a little bit more aware of your breath. This is the only goal, just awareness. There is no perfection. You can't do it wrong. Ah. And now I'm going to invite you to add on a squeeze or a lift of your pelvic floor as you inhale. So just practice this a few times and see what feels best. For me, in my body, it feels best to inhale and squeeze at the same time, exhale and relax. For other people, it might be the opposite. You might want to squeeze on the exhale. Great, play with it, get off track, come back to track. So let's take about 10 breaths like that. And again, we are just practicing, we are just feeling into this connection, right? Between our breath, between our physical body, and anything else that might arise for you. So we'll do this for about, let's say, three minutes. So we'll go till 47. Sometimes I find it helpful if I use my hands like this, like a physical reminder to drop in, lift. I find when I'm doing this that my body wants to start moving. And maybe it's a lift of your hips, or because I'm sitting, it's a little bit more forward to back. Whatever feels organic to you, we are letting that energy move. We are awakening this part of our body. And if your mind goes somewhere else, bring it back to the breath. Ask your body what else it might want in this moment. A deeper breath, eyes open, eyes closed. A bigger movement with your arms, maybe less movement of your body, maybe stillness. I'm going quite slow in this. You can see my movements with my hands, and maybe you can hear my breath. You can also go really fast and really use this energy to charge yourself up. So you can play with that if you're in a safe space. And now I want you to bring your breath back to normal. Move your body however it feels like it needs to move. You can stretch out, you might have to yawn, you might have to shake in some way, whatever feels organic. There is no wrong movement, there is nothing right. And just notice what you feel in your body. Do you feel shivers? Do you feel goosebumps? Do you feel tingles? Do you feel stillness? Do you feel literally anything? Sometimes it feels like bubbles or sparkles. Sometimes it feels like a big emotion comes up. I definitely know that sometimes when I really slow down, I get a little teary because there's some big feelings that want to move. This is how you start to tap in. This is how you start to feel more of this that is inside of you at all times. So I invite you to stay in your space, whatever that looks like. And I want to open it up to questions, comments, thoughts, wisdom, practices you'd like to share, anything that's on your heart. And I just want to thank you all again for being here. You are welcome to stay, and you are also welcome to just be in your little bubble if that feels good. I am going to drop in some links here to some upcoming stuff. I will also send this out in emails. I have 2 online classes in June. I have 3 in-person classes here in Honolulu if you are in the islands, all focused on sensuality, pleasure, expression, breath, touch, and all the delicious things that allow us to tap into the erotic within. I invite you to stay on. I invite you to stay in touch. I'm going to stop the recording, and I just want to say thank you to everyone who is here.